A very warm welcome to all of you to this roundtable on the art and science of developing leaders, presented by BIMTech along with NHRDN in association with our knowledge partner Aon Hewitt and channel partner NDTV Profit. I'm Shailaja Iyengar, Associate Professor with BIMTech, and I'm your anchor for this evening. Before we proceed, a small request. Please switch off your cell phones or put them on to silent mode. On behalf of BIMTech, NHRDN, Aon Hewitt, and NDTV, I thank you very much for coming to this evening's event. I also take this opportunity to particularly thank the NHRDN for all the support extended in conducting this summit in Mumbai. In fact, Mr. Kamal Singh is here with us today. Thank you, sir. Last year, we conducted similar roundtables in Gurgaon, Mumbai, Bangalore, and Bhubaneswar on the theme Art and Science of Developing Leaders with different sub-themes, and received tremendous response from the HR fraternity in all the places. This year, we are back again with another series of discussions in collaborations with our partners and panelists. Our sub-theme in Gurgaon and Chennai was on building global leaders in uncertain times. Today, we have the sub-theme Building a Ladder with Succession Planning, Learnings and Experience Sharing, where initially Aon Hewitt will share their insights on career planning to succession planning, followed by a panel discussion. I now invite Professor Kishore Sinha, Professor and Head HR of Birla Institute of Management Technology, Greater Noida, and the man behind these HR roundtables, to welcome the gathering.
You didn't mention anything. You won't do it. Okay.
Professor Sinha has more than 42 years experience in HR and has held leadership positions in organizations like SAIL, NTPC, Reliance Energy, Reliance Infocom, and Reliance Industries Limited, and as Director Group HR, JPL, Jindal Steel and Power. He has received extensive training in human resources from Harvard Business School, Templeton, Oxford, Michigan Business School, etc. He has been associated with the National HRD Network and is also a fellow of All India Management Association. A keen thinker, learner, and innovator, he also tailored and executed change in corporates and has experience of working with international level consultants like McKinsey, Hewitt, Mercer, Ernst & Young, Kearney, to name a few. On his retirement from the corporate world, he is working as a professor and head HR with BIMTech in Greater Noida. He is also a visiting corporate trainer and a consultant. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Shailaja. Thank you for being generous. Yeah. Good evening, Mumbai. And Mumbai, the maximum city, the city which doesn't sleep, I am told, the city of dreams, and the commercial center also, the business center. Mumbai, which has given a large number of successful leaders in all walks of life, and business or trade or commerce, arts, fine arts, even sports, cricket particularly. Mumbai is a land where leaders have been produced and been successful. I welcome you all in the round table, which is happening on the second time in Mumbai, city of Mumbai. And we are really proud as BIMTech to be in this city. We have a panel discussion primarily on art and science of developing leaders. I recall Davos at the turn of millennium when they confirmed they were trying to find out the issues for the new millennium, challenges for the new millennium. Another major challenge in their list was shortage of leadership or challenge of leadership. I think perhaps that they were talking in terms of all areas of leadership, be it business or be it industry, be it trade, be it commerce, be it national leaders. And we have been in first decade or first 12 years of the millennium, we have been experiencing it substantially, the shortage of leadership in all walks of life. I think with this, our knowledge partner, Evan Hewitt, and we discussed, and we thought we'll have for a couple of years to come work on a theme called the art and science of developing leaders. This is the 6th round table that we have before you on this series of round tables. We did bring a round table last year, 3 of them. They were on different topics, as Professor Shalja mentioned. They were on topics of the concept itself, basically. They were talking on the leadership pipeline development. They were talking of branding of leadership. We had produced a booklet from BIMTech, which soft copy is there in your kit, because not a hard copy. But it's a very rich gathering of about some 18, 20 thought leaders who have given contributions of their thoughts in the process of developing leadership. Today we have thought leaders, new thought leaders who have been successful leaders themselves, people of achievement, people who have contributed in leadership development themselves. And we have, I'd like to welcome here Dr. Yasho Verma from LG Electronics, COO, LG India. I'd like to welcome Mr. Vivek Paranjpe from Reliance Industries, I know, advisor and group president. I have here Mr. Rajan Datta, group president of Reliance Communications, all mega leaders. We have here Mr. Yogi Shriram, executive vice president, HR of Larsen & Toubro. And we have Professor Indra Parekh, ex-dean IIM Ahmedabad, and now herself a CEO of Flame, the consulting firm that she's running. We have also, as a part of our knowledge partners support, Prashant Srivastav, who is also going to moderate. We welcome you all, eminent people. We welcome you here. I have also with us Rajeshri Murali, who is Evan Hewitt support on sharing the research of Evan Hewitt on career planning and succession planning. Welcome to you, ma'am. We have, over a period of time, developed this forum, which we are going to sustain for a couple of years, and discuss a couple of sub-themes. And last time that when we discussed in Delhi of this year, 2012-13, we discussed primarily developing leadership in downturns, times which were uncertain times. And here in Mumbai, we have chosen a sub-theme on succession planning, which is a critical issue today in the corporates, particularly India Inc. And multinationals. Looking forward to the lively discussions likely to take place on this subject in the today's roundtable, we have a few questions in our mind. To search for the convincing answer whether Indian corporations, both public and private sector, are likely to contribute substantially in developing leaders for the next 10-15 years' time when there is a shortage of leaders expected in the globe. Talking of leadership global practices happening elsewhere and whether they can be implanted or they can be used to as a model for Indian corporates, India Inc., to develop leaders and create a succession plan for future. With my experience of 43 years in the corporates and institution, I find that there have been several Indian companies who have been doing succession plan. some of us, we have been calling them as academy companies who have been really developing leadership pipeline over a period of time and developing career as well as succession plan for developing the CEOs and the business leaders or also the functional leaders of the company. These companies, some of them are Tata Group, Infosys, Wipro, Aditya Birla, to name a few, Mahindra Group, Larsen & Toubro, ICICI, NTPC, BHEL, SAIL, LG Group, ONGC, etc., etc. They are mega companies who have been indulging in development of leaders from time to time. In the current year, you would see that there have been several young leaders who have been taking over regimes of leadership from veteran leaders. These young leaders have brought in a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and hope for India Inc. We have several examples of Cyrus Mistry, Tata Group, Rishad Premji of Wipro Group, Alok Kirloskar from Kirloskar Group, Shravin Mittal from Bharti Airtel, Aditya Mittal from ArcelorMittal Group, and Priya Agrawal in Vedanta Group. These inductions in their respective groups is an indication of catch them young. This is a succession mantra for tomorrow. While developing effective strategies for grooming future leaders, Indian companies can learn a few lessons from some of the companies which are judged as best companies for leaders by several assessing organizations. And Aon Hewitt's Best Company for Leaders, they have been sharing and setting global trends and practices for organizations in the country. Few years ago, CEO Magazine, in partnership with the Hay Group, also came up and identified best companies for leaders. In a survey of large number of organizations, where the question was asked, suggest names of 3 companies from which they would most like to recruit leaders. The results of the survey indicated the top companies were 3M, P&G, Coca-Cola, HSBC Holdings, etc. These companies surprisingly have common approach to succession plan. All of them formal, in-depth development of programs for leadership development, future potentials of the leaders, and their practices of coaching, mentoring, also followed by action learning and with in-depth feedback and assessment system. All these companies created cultures that make leadership development on priority. I conclude by quoting an Indian leader who has set an example by grooming his successor well before time and passed on his baton with a successor when the successor was ready. Pramod Bhasin of Genpact says, companies that are not promoting young leaders are risking innovations, risking creativity and new ideas, risking on speed and energy, and ability to respond proactively to the market. Thank you very much indeed for coming to this round table, and I welcome you once again to this. Thank you.
Before we move on, I would like to convey that our director, Dr. H. Chaturvedi, has also conveyed his best wishes for this evening's discussion. And he would have been here, but he had some other engagement, so he's not able to be here. Now, as the evening progresses, I will be introducing the session to you. You have the profile in front of you with your kit. So before that, may I request Ms. Rajeshwari Murli, Director, Practice Leader, Talented Performance, Aon Hewitt Consulting in India, to join us on the stage for the keynote session. Ms. Rajeshwari has 28 plus years of organizational and leadership development experience in senior positions for global companies in India and the US. In Aon Hewitt, she has worked in areas of design and implementation of performance systems, enabling performance effectiveness, behavioral and functional competency articulation, leadership pipeline strategy, leadership development, institutionalizing mentoring, career pathing, architecture, etc. She is also leading the new solutions from Aon Hewitt in the market, such as creating and sustaining a culture of innovation, diversity and inclusion, as well as research solutions for effectively integrating and managing Generation Y in organizations. Prior to Aon Hewitt, Rajeshwari was with the Infosys Leadership Institute, where she led the team responsible for facilitating the development of corporate leadership pool. She worked on design implementation and of selection process for high potentials, succession planning, leadership competency modeling, integration of leadership development with organizational HR policies, etc. Additionally, she also worked on organizational-wide development initiatives like change management, innovation, and diversity. And honors in economics from Lady Shri Ram College in Delhi University and an MBA from Faculty of Management Studies. Ms. Rajeshwari has also worked as a consulting partner with Pacific Partners, Pacific Cellular, which is now Verizon in the US, and Xerox, Western region, in various sales, marketing, and regional roles. Ms. Rajeshwari Murli. Thank you. Call a mic?
No, this is fine. Will I be able to use a remote, or I'll have to move this?
Remote hai?
Good evening. I think one of the challenges for this evening is really to understand what is an art and what is a science. And I think what is going to be significant is in everything that we do, especially in HR, and those that you want to institutionalize, it's actually a combination of both. Whenever we do one without the other, it really leads to a transactional process, and there is nothing sustainable about it. So I think that it's really important, and I think we can relate it to what we've been talking about in the various sessions that BIMTech has had. What I'm going to take you through quickly is career planning and how it relates to the leadership pipeline, and how we need to, as I said, combine both aspects of it. We really believe that career planning, as we call it, or career pathing, or pathing as it's called in the Western world, is becoming increasingly significant to organizations and needs to be really looked at as we more and more bring in young people and as the pipeline becomes significantly important for us. One of the first things that we noticed as we keep doing our engagement surveys is that what is really important is that what is emerging from every engagement survey for every company is career opportunities. You can really look at this. I mean, look at the significance. 84% of employees across organization are saying that what they really look for in their organizations are career opportunities. Are we as organizations ready for this? Research, this was provided to us in the employer study that we did across India and is actually true across Asia also. Many times, I'm sure all of you have loved this Dilbert cartoon. All of us imagine that we're doing work that is much more significant than what our daily life is. Here we have actually, I'm sorry, I think it's not moving in the same, I'm going to actually go back. Sorry about this. This is not moving with that? Okay. So I'm just going to actually go back to the previous slide. So if you really look at this, you can see 84% of clients who are actually noticing that career opportunity is actually the most significant thing for them from a client perspective, from an employee perspective to actually engage them. Dilbert talks about this, and he says, in my own imagination, I'm doing a lot more relevant work than what I actually get at work. And I think this really resonates with all of us in the audience. So career aspirations is, again, one of the top 3 drivers. So it's not only career opportunities, it's what companies give me, but how does this then match with what my aspirations are? What is it that I want to do? And how does that connect with what the companies are offering me? That is what is really relevant. What did we hear from the corner office? This is what the employees are telling us. What did we hear from the CEOs? I think Mr. Sinha talked about this. Every CEO today is worrying about talent, at every level, but more significantly, talent at the senior levels. So development of leaders has become a significant CEO charter. 87% of the best companies that we surveyed basically are telling us that enhancing the leadership pipeline across all levels is a priority. And you can see the difference between the best versus the rest. And maybe that is what distinguishes the organizations and actually differentiates them. 91% of the best said that developing the right capabilities. So it's not just bringing them in. It's not just hiring from the best B schools. It's not just hiring them from the best engineering schools. But how you actually develop them and give them the right capabilities is very, very significant. The third one that I want all of you to take away from this is growing leaders holistically. Gone are the days when you could move up vertically. I think we have a number of eminent leaders sitting in the panel, and I think all of you will agree that unless leaders have exposure to multiple functions, multiple geographies, they are not really as collaborative, perhaps, or as understanding of what the organizations really require. So very, very important. And here is where we see the best really pull away from the rest. So you can see from our survey results, 80% of the best against 57 of the rest insist on rotational assignments. Do all of you have that built into your organization? Do you have those opportunities for your leaders? 80% of the best against 59% of the rest. If you don't have rotational assignments, at least give their leaders special assignments, stretch assignments. This is another thing that you're going to start seeing. Why do you need to do leadership pipeline, or why do you need to do career planning? I think this is really cute. Here's a young person sitting there and telling his boss, I want to get into CEOing. We're going to increasingly have young people who you may think have the audacity to come into your office and say, I really want to do much more than what I'm doing at the moment. I think I'm really smart. This is a very different generation of Indians. This is a generation of Indians who feel privileged, who feel confident to say a lot more than what my generation did. And we're going to see this. So we in Aon Hewitt decided to do a Gen Y study. And this is what we found. Increasingly, Gen Y, that is looked at very negatively in the media, is actually subtly giving us messages that we as leaders are not willing to listen or not willing to understand. We actually came up with 8 Gen Y mantras that will be shared with you in a brochure. But one of the top mantras that Aon Hewitt has found from its research was Gen Y is saying it's all about my career and where it's going. When I choose an organization, I want to know what you will have available to me. As you saw in the previous cartoon, Gen Y is very confidently then asking you, when you go for a campus interview, they are telling you, show me the career paths. Show me that it's fair. Show me that it's egalitarian. I don't want to be nominated. I want to do it in a very transparent manner. That's what we are hearing from Gen Y. Why do we all need to do this? 50% of our population, as you can see, is going to be in this age bracket. We are already seeing telecom organizations, which are represented here. We're seeing people in the infrastructure organizations, perhaps at the senior levels have older people, but at the younger level, anywhere between 30 to 50% of the working population is Gen Y. Are you ready to talk to them about how they can actually integrate into your leadership pipeline? Do you have vision on what the paths are that are available to them? The other thing that they talked to us about was the opportunity that I want is to have my mind utilized. I want to be able to move around as much as possible and work in different roles and areas. They're not looking at that vertical climb that some of us who are older looked at when we joined organizations. There was a time when every person, and I work in Bangalore, every software engineer then wanted to become a PA and then wanted to become a PM and wanted to become an SPM and so on. And these were like convoluted roles that were created that didn't really mean anything. They gave an illusion of growth to young people. They gave an illusion that you were actually progressing. Today's young people are saying, actually show me how to do different things when I'm younger. So that's very, very significant. They're also looking for organizations that acknowledge and have a career philosophy. How does this all relate to the leadership pipeline? If you really look at it, to us, career planning and the leadership pipeline just does not look at the top two segments, just does not look at right at the top. Succession planning, which is a big theme in the next roundtable, really is succession planning at all levels. Do you have somebody, do you have an HR manager who is then equipping the next young person to come up into their role? Do you have an HR head who's looking at somebody coming into their level? You need to actually integrate it into the larger organization. Given this, this is what we believe. The triangle, all the way across, we believe one of the fundamental pillars that every organization needs to have is career planning. And career planning is not just for the senior leaders, and career planning is much more than the much touted individual development plans. Every organization does that, but we are talking about the art and science of career planning. So what is career management? I want to keep harping on the art and science because you're going to have to do both of it. You're going to have to bring in structural changes. You're going to have to do linkages with various HR processes and business processes. And at the same time, there is also the art of it, which is how do you actually support these leaders in growing their skills. So career management is actually a planned effort to link individual aspirations, strengths, and career goals, we believe, with organizational goals. What always happens is somebody comes back from the US, this person is a bright young person, the management doesn't know really what to do with them, some opening comes up, you don't even worry about is this the right person for the right job. You stick that person into that job. Or you have an opportunity for a new geography, nobody wants to go to Africa. Do you ever worry about, do I have the right skills to go into that job? No. Often companies move the first person who is willing to go into that job. What we are saying is we need to move away from that. Career planning all the way through to succession planning is really managing and marrying the organization and business need with the aspiration of individuals within the group. What is very important for us, and we want to, as an Aon Hewitt point of view, want to stress this. First comes the organizational need. You don't grow leaders just because everybody wants to grow. There has to be a business need. There has to be a business imperative for a role. You don't have conversations in a vacuum. You have those positions. Everybody who joins Intel doesn't necessarily become an Intel fellow. In order to become an Intel fellow, which is the highest of the highs there are very, very strict guidelines. And unless you meet those guidelines, you don't become an Intel fellow. So that's very significant. What is important is the organizational need. That comes first. But again, what you need to do is listen for the aspirations of the individuals within the organization. But what does all this help you, both career planning as well as succession planning? What it's going to help you with is that enhanced employee engagement. Here is somebody who is willing to listen to me, and I don't want to belabor this point because we've talked about it in the first few slides. Organization has flexibility and speed. You have a pool of people now who are willing to go out there and take those two new geographic assignments. You have a pool of people who are competent, who can then move into an SBU role. So it allows you to plan for that and gives you amazing flexibility and speed. Obviously, using resource utilization. This is done in a much more scientific manner than what we've all been doing so far. And what it underpins is the leadership pipeline. I can't emphasize enough the need for building that pipeline all the way from the bottom. Emerging leaders are going to be very, very significant. You want your Gen Y to stay in the company? Show them that they are part of the leadership pipeline. If you can't do that, then you really have no option but to let them go when they want to go. That is very, very important. Somewhere along the line, we've all lost the intent of Ramcharan and whatever Benes was telling us in the leadership pipeline, and the focus has become so much in the top leadership. But if you don't really plan for what the future is requiring you to do as an organization, you're going to actually lose time. All this needs to be really anchored around a clearly defined philosophy. What is it that you're offering your employees? What is it that you're telling them? That needs to be clearly articulated. If you're saying it's egalitarian, make it egalitarian. It should be such that every IJP reaches every individual on their desktop. If you're not able to do that, please don't call it a transparent career pathing process. So the philosophy of what you want to put out there, if you want holistic leaders, what do you mean by holistic leaders? What are the kind of experiences they should gain over the years? That needs to be clearly articulated. The other really significant part of it is actually the science of it, that every organization needs to pen down and have part of their HR manual, perhaps, and really fit into the largest strategy of organization. What is the architecture? What are the movements that you're permitting? You know, a lot of clients that we work with tell us, but you know, this actually happens. I've moved 5 times. Well, you've moved 5 times because you've been lucky. You've either had a patron, you've had a great mentor, or you've been at the right place at the right time. But is it perceived the same way by everybody in that organization? So do you have the backbone, the entire framework that goes behind creating the leadership pipeline and creating career planning? That is the most significant part of it. The conglomerates that are sitting here at the table, do you have transition? Do you have holistic experience? And I know L&T does, where they move people across. You know, is this something that is available to everybody? Do you then build it into your value proposition? Do people actually know L&T? I know it because it's one of our clients. But do people know L&T for that? You know, is it built into it? And that is what we are talking about when we talk about a career architecture. So the career architecture and the succession planning actually go hand in hand. Succession planning is nothing but a subset of the career architecture that needs to be actually designed all the way from the bottom to the top. One of the very important things is, what are the movements that you encourage? What are the incentives that you offer for people to move across? Then how do you actually encourage them to move diagonally? Those are, again, some important things that you need to think through. At the end of the day, we believe that if you really want to have great succession planning and great career planning, it's all about competencies. Have you clearly thought through what are the competencies that you require at various levels? What are the competencies that you require at different roles? And this is both behavioral as well as functional competencies. Why is this important? Because it actually makes it fair, it makes it accessible, as I heard Professor Sinha say, it makes it transparent. You can perhaps even have a third party do it. And it gives that feeling that I've got this position that's come up in my organization, 5 of us are bidding for it, and we are being evaluated in a fair manner. What am I being evaluated against? Against a list of competencies that is understood by everybody. The biggest thing that it allows you to create and I hope people do spend time on creating these competencies appropriately, is it allows you to create a culture that differentiates you from other companies. So if you believe you're an innovative company, do you have entrepreneurship or innovation as one of your competencies, as one of your behavioral competencies? Do you then look for it when you promote people? Do you look for it when you hire people, both laterally as well as in the front line? So again, a very fundamental piece, both for career planning and definitely very important for succession planning. So in the 9 box, are your competencies being evaluated on the potential side? And how fairly are you evaluating them? For us, as a HR consulting group, it is very, very important for us. The linkage. Now this, again, is a mix of both the art and the science. You can do all this. You can talk about succession planning from here to eternity, but it will remain transactional if the linkage to every HR subsystem is not maintained. Talent planning. Have you segmented the various people you're going after for your succession planning? There are fungible and non-fungible resources. Is that understood? Who is fungible? Who is non-fungible? Fungible could be somebody who is an operation person. A non-fungible could be a legal expert. Have you thought through it? Talent planning in terms of diversity. Diversity, it has been found, is one of the best drivers to drive growth and innovation. So are you bringing the right number of people into it? Is that baked into your succession planning? Have you decided who you're going to build and who are you going to buy? And at what level are you going to build and buy? Has that been thought through? So that is an important element of both career planning as well as succession planning. Performance management. There are a number of functional competencies which really need to be looked at in terms of performance management and can be evaluated at that level. You can have trigger mechanisms that will allow somebody who's performing at a higher level of competency to automatically then be considered for the next role. Are you thinking about it? Is that happening? Is your learning and development then linked to all those things that I'm emphasizing? Are the L&D managers here actually putting together plans that reflect what is required for succession planning, plans that are really required for career planning? And finally, the recognition and the rewards that go with it. Because no career planning and no succession planning is going to work if somebody just stays in the queue for succession planning and never actually succeeds. Okay? And that is the worst thing that can happen. A lot of people ask me, and I'm linking it to succession planning, what about you do all this and you get 6 people ready or get 3 people ready and only 1 person can finally be there? What you are really doing, and even if they leave the organization, is actually creating a brand for your own organization. HLL very famously talks about how they're actually the repository for a number of leaders who go out there into the world. And I think L&T can talk about it. I think we've seen the recent announcement where somebody exited, but is going to lead another steel organization. So it doesn't really matter what you do, but do you actually go through it and do you really look at it in terms of what you're contributing to the industry as a whole? So I really wanted to emphasize this whole piece about how each and every aspect of it actually needs to be connected. Very often, a number of our HR summits become very nebulous because we talk about qualities, we talk about the softer skills. We firmly believe that it is a combination of the two. The career path that you provide will not only articulate the competencies that are necessary, it will tell a young person from an engineering college what they need to have to hire. Your recruitment managers will know exactly what they need to hire against. And all of them will be recruiting on the same platform. They will not be recruiting based on their own perception. It gives an employee a holistic picture of what is potentially available to them. There are very often areas that a lot of employees don't even really know where it comes from. You assess the fit between individual aspirations and organizational needs. One of the interesting things about Gen Y is not all of them want to be CEOs, by the way. Our generation was brought up to think that we had to reach the top. There's a number of young people who are perfectly happy doing perhaps a product role, and they want to stay there. They want to stay in a technology role, and they don't necessarily want to go up to a CEO. So it actually gives you that mix. It allows you to do the appropriate match, and it is linked to rewards, which I think is very, very significant. And I think what is also beginning to be very, very important, it allows you to do talent segmentation. You don't have to get into this urgent need to bring perhaps the inappropriate person. I hate to see gender equality being played out where somebody's going out there and looking for a woman director, even though I'm very passionate about diversity. I would rather see women who are very, very capable, and all things being equal, that they are being hired for the job. So it allows you to do the appropriate segmentation, not just with women, but with the mix that you actually want within the organization, be it lateral and so on. For succession planning, it really allows you to understand when you need to start. In certain non-fungible roles, you may need to start much earlier than what you had thought. And finally, it helps you to build a much more robust talent and leadership pipeline. So I kind of end again with this one that I really liked. You know, there's this young person who's finished a project, says, what am I doing next? And says, make a spreadsheet and track something. Track what? And this actually is happening in our organizations. And he's told, track anything. So let's all move away from what track and make sure that we all have a track that is unique to our own organization and that links to the succession planning that you want to build for your leadership pipeline. Thank you. Okay, sure.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rajeshwari. You were very eloquent in expressing what younger generation really want, because this is what we actually find on the campuses also. And before we move on, I would request Professor Kishore Sinha to present her with a memento as a token of our appreciation. I'll just get it one minute. The last session for this evening will bring out the HR perspective on the importance of building future leaders with succession planning. Over the last few years, it's become increasingly difficult to find appropriate leaders to take over, as both Professor Kishore Sinha and Ms. Rajeshwari have just elucidated. Besides, the younger generation of existing business houses seem to want to pursue a different path, more in keeping with modern trends than taking over family businesses. Add to this the lucrative offers from MNCs overseas, which take away the talent from the country. Hence, succession planning becomes all the more important for identifying and developing internal people with the potential to fill key business leadership positions in the company. Companies that are well known for their succession planning and executive talent development practices include GE, Honeywell, IBM, Marriott, Microsoft, Pepsi, Procter & Gamble. These are among the MNCs. And Professor Sinha has already mentioned some of the Indian companies which are doing it. So what advice do our panelists have for implementing succession planning, bearing in mind the peculiarities of the Indian business industry? Now, to discuss this at length, I take the opportunity to invite Mr. Prashant Srivastava, our moderator for the session, on the dais. Mr. Prashant leads the engagement in organization culture practice for Aon Hewitt in India. He has 23 plus years of experience across various management consulting firms working for clients in Europe, US, and India. A mechanical engineer and an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad, prior to Aon Hewitt, Prashant was heading Gallup India. He has worked on country strategies, M&A, creating customer-centric organizations, employee engagement, customer engagement, business partner engagement, and leadership development, while working from different consulting firms. He has also had brief stints with HPCL, one of the top 3 oil companies in India, and ACC, the largest cement company in India. Mr. Prashant has worked on several hundred engagement assignments to drive business results in the last 7 years. Thank you for being here with us today, Mr. Prashant. Yeah. I invite our first panelist for the evening. I think I'll go ladies first. Professor Indira Parekh. Professor Indira is the founder, president of FLAME. She was a faculty at IIM Ahmedabad for over 30 years and a dean from 2002 to 2005. She has taught at INSEAD, Fontainebleau, France, and Texas A&M University. She has specialized in organization development and design and institution building. She has designed and offered management and leadership development programs in public and private sector and multinational organizations. She's been a consultant to various national and international organizations. Professor Indira is also on the board of several companies. She's a coach for many leaders and upcoming organizations. Her current work focuses on facilitating learning and development of management and employees across levels in the context of organizations' growth. Professor Parekh has been honored with several Lifetime Achievement Awards, both nationally and internationally. She has written numerous articles published in national and international journals and is a co-author and author of several books. We are honored to have you here with us this evening, ma'am. Our next panelist is Mr. Rajan Datta. May I request you to join the panel on the dais, please? Mr. Rajan Datta is currently the President Corporate HR with Reliance Communications Limited, Mumbai. A management graduate from Chandigarh and a PG diploma in HRD from Ahmedabad and training and development from ISD Delhi, Mr. Datta has held several senior positions over the last 27 years of work in companies like Modi Xerox, RPG Enterprises, Idea Cellular, Bharti Airtel, and Lupin Limited. A human resource facilitator, trainer, job evaluator, and total quality management specialist. He has successfully introduced and implemented some of the HR and TQM interventions to bring about transformation and change in organizations and professional bodies that he has been associated with. He's been a part of the top leadership team to implement the best HR practices with the objective to enhance productivity and efficiency of the company and people. He's also been associated with a large number of professional associations in various capacities in the National HRD Network, National Center for Quality Management, Delhi Management Association, etc. Welcome to the panel, sir. I now invite Mr. Vivek Paranjpe to join the panelists. Mr. Paranjpe is Group President HR of Reliance Industries Limited since 2009. A science graduate from Ferguson College, Pune, and an alumnus of XLRI, Jamshedpur. Mr. Paranjpe started his career with Hindustan Lever in 1975 and worked with few companies in India like ICIM, Hotel Corporation of India, and Johnson & Johnson. He worked with Hewlett-Packard from 1988 to 2003, and his last role was to lead the integration of Compaq into HP for Asia-Pacific region. Currently, his professional engagements include independent director on the board of Motilal Oswal Financial Services Limited and Advisory Board of Motilal Oswal Private Equity Fund. Thank you for joining us this evening, Mr. Paranjpe. Our next panelist is Dr. Yasho V. Verma. Dr. Verma has taken over as Chief Operating Officer of LG Electronics India with effect from January 2010 and is now looking after business operations of the company. In his earlier role, he was Director HR and MS for LG India. He joined LG as VP HR and MS in 1997 and was elevated as executive in the LG Global hierarchy in January 2008. He has been the first non-Korean to reach this level in the LG Global hierarchy. An engineering graduate with a post-graduation in business administration and a PhD in the area of organizational behavior from IIT Kharagpur, Dr. Verma started his career with Tata Steel in Jamshedpur and worked there for 15 years before moving to LG Electronics. He was rated as a heretic by Business Today and Gallup and appeared on the cover page of Business Today. He has addressed boards of prestigious companies, both in India and abroad. He's delivered guest lectures in London Business School, Seoul University, Wharton, Philadelphia, in addition to premier management institutes in India. He has been conferred the honorary fellowship by IMA for significant contribution towards professional management. He's authored a book, Passion, The Untold Story of LG Electronics, and is also the honorary editor for Journal of Projective Psychology and Mental Health by Anchorage, US. It's indeed a pleasure to have you here with us, sir. Last but not the least, I invite Mr. Yogi Sriram to join the panelists. Mr. Yogi Sriram is Executive Vice President, Corporate Head of all HR businesses of Larsen & Toubro Limited. He has 35 years of experience in HR development function, of which 20 are leading human resources teams in companies of major significance. He is a member of the board of Power Independent Company and permanent invitee on the Hydrocarbons Independent Company board in L&T, director on the board of a JV company of L&T in the GCC, besides leading a world-class institute of project management. Mr. Sriram has made significant contributions in other companies like ABB, British Petroleum, HR Director for Africa, Middle East, Turkey, South Asia, and the Taj Group of Hotels. His areas of interest are succession planning, career sculpting, team coaching, talent management, and change management. He has published papers in journals of international repute and has built a reputation as a successful thought leader and implementer, having laid the foundation for most of L&T's signature leadership programs. An economics graduate from SRCC Delhi and a master's in personal management from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. He has several other degrees to his credit. He has been admitted as the first HR professional in India and as fellow of All India Management Association, and he's on the governing board of IMA. He's also the vice president of Bombay Management Association and president of the Mumbai chapter of National HRD Network. Thank you very much for being with us here today, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an extremely interesting evening with this power-packed panel. So I now hand over the session to the moderator, Mr. Prashant Srivastava, for further discussions. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, everyone, for coming over and being here, listening to us. And thank you very much. Eminent panelists here with me, and we're going to discuss a very pertinent and important subject called succession planning. Before I throw open the questions, I just was recalling a meeting of mine with the chairman of a very large Indian corporate, and I asked him that when you retire, what is that if you had achieved, you would say that you can retire in peace? So he said, this is a multi-billion-dollar company, and so I thought that he would say that by the time I retire, if this is so many $1 billion or so many times and all that, I would really retire in peace. But what he said was surprisingly very different. he said that two things if I can do. One, create a leadership pipeline such that we have effective succession planning for every position that is critical in this business. I would say I've done my job. And second thing is that if I make this company or group customer centric, I would say that my stint was very, very fruitful. So I said I thought that you would say that, you know, from X billion dollars that we are, we'll become 10X billion dollars, something like that. So he said, see, if I get leadership pipeline and succession planning right, this X, 10X, 20X will happen. But if I don't get this right, and if I can only get my revenue right, you know, it won't be sustainable. So with that dialogue, and you know, that dialogue I had maybe 10 years ago, but that had a lasting impression on my mind. I would like to throw open to the panelists the question whether this whole succession planning is a management fad or is it a business need? What would you say, Yogi? Is it really a business need in your experience?
First of all, I'd like to talk about this topic in a much more macro context and not in the context only of an organization. Recently, there was an article which said that India slipped in the global competitive index 3 places. And the top reason given for why it has slipped three places is the lack of infrastructure. So if you look at it from a macro point of view, there are some sectors that can make a big difference and impact to this country. And one has to see whether there is a paucity of talent or whether there is enough of talent. And as a part of that exercise of seeing whether there is a paucity or we are spending enough of effort and time in creating leaders in that area, is the succession planning process, is the career planning process robust? Second is, if you look at it more specifically from a company perspective, I think it ties in very strongly with the strategic plan of a company. So it's not really just it's not a human resource initiative alone. It has to tie in with what is it that the strategic plan has for the company in the next 5 years, next 3 years, next 2 years, next 10 years. And in that perspective, how many leaders do you need to develop and so on. I think a very important debate that perhaps you could facilitate as we go along in this discussion is that should there be an emphasis on domain expertise? When you do succession and career planning, to what extent should that be emphasized? And you talk about fungibility. Fungibility is okay, I suppose, in certain sectors. How important is it in sectors like infrastructure and so on? And how are both managements, strategists, thinkers, HR folks, functional folks contributing to developing people so that you can, come to a resolution in this debate?
Fantastic. So, Vivek, what do you think? Should we even focus on succession planning, or should this be more by decision, based on how the economy or the industry transforms?
Well, I mean, I have worked for now 36, 37 years, and I've never seen succession planning. The succession planning is a great concept, a great idea, a great framework. But in real life, very rarely does one see succession planning. What one has seen is developing pipeline of leaders and talent so that they're ready to take up key positions as and when they become vacant. And this is an ongoing activity which every corporation has to undertake, depending on aging of different levels in the hierarchy, depending on your attrition at different levels of hierarchy, depending on what your growth plans and growth strategies are. You got to continuously keep developing talent pipeline. And this talent pipeline becomes available as and when a position falls vacant. That's what I've seen happening, and that's what I've seen working exceedingly well. Rather than saying, so-and-so person is retiring in 2014 and these are the two people I'm developing for that, I've not seen that happening.
So, in your experience in 2014 when the person retires, would you already know which are the 2 or 3 people?
I'll have many people ready. And one of at the rate of 30%. And I'll be so many times bigger and I'll need 5 more leaders or 6 more leaders. I know I got attrition, so I need 2 more leaders. So I know that I need about 13, 14 strategic leaders in next 3 years' time in my corporation. And these 13 to 14 strategic leaders will come from next line of leadership. So I got to identify high potential people amongst them. I got to work upon them, help them become right leaders, so that as and when those positions fall vacant, I got people ready. So it's not which happens Bhagwan ke bharose. It happens with a plan, but not for a role. It happens for a bunch of roles.
So, picking on what Yogi said, that should there be domain expertise or not, and picking on what Vivek said, that we develop leaders and we fill in positions. So, Yasho, in your experience, would there be merit, or do companies have specific domain or functional expertise in mind while developing these leaders, and therefore is there focus on replacing as and when the position falls through one of the people who are in the pipeline?
I'm totally with Vivek, because the statement which you made, I think such statement by CEOs and chairmen are kept for consultants or press. Basically, the most important thing for any CEO is 2 rabbits running in different directions, to catch them on a day-to-day basis. One is market share, another is profitability. The disruptive changes which are taking place, the longevity of CEOs and chairmen and all is gone down drastically. I'll give you one example. One of the premium magazines comes out with the best young CEOs, and about 4 or 5 years back, the list I traced, I knew a couple of people, and let me tell you, 80% of them had lost their jobs in next 8 months. Because the standard of excellence is going up. In short time, giving results, and mid-term and long-term planning of succession are again rabbits which are going absolutely in different directions. The point with Rajeshwari Ted, I was very impressed because she was talking as a consultant, but she was not talking like a consultant, very convincingly. But the issue is, what are the competencies? Innovation is one competency. I have handled innovation for 6 years along with there are so many facets of innovation which are required in different market, different situation, different economy, different product, different industry. Which competency do you need? Change. Whether you want to grow in market share, you want to grow in profit, whether you want to grow in a developing economy, absolutely different change skills are required. So, that is why what I say, there is an intent, but it is more of intuitive things which really work out. I am a student of history. Let us take any historical, any king's kingdom, famous kings, the takeover, the succession planning, where the people are limited, either the sons or the brothers of the king will take over. There's a huge bloodbath. The king's mind was clear, this son will take over. But when he dies, who takes over? Absolutely different thing. So the situation, the disruptive changes, unbelievable things are happening in the business. You know, the dwarfs are taking over the giants. Did anyone think that Tata Steel with 3% market share will take over Chorus with 22% of market share globally? The skills required of the CEO is absolutely different. No one can presume what type of CEO or chairman you need. So these are the challenges, these are the realistic challenges. And let me tell you, most of the people have to survive for their day-to-day targets. The board will not going to leave anyone who is not achieving his business results. Yes, you can make a lot of statements. Thank you.
A little point to make.
Sure.
My learning in life is that theory actually comes from the word theater. And the word theater is where you practice. So therefore, our sort of being cynical about the effectiveness of a process because of the challenges doesn't necessarily reduce the importance of that particular process. And I think I'd like to slightly differ from my honorable colleagues here and say that as a process, this is invaluable for the strategic plan. Yes, the challenges are many. For example, if the business is growing at a very fast pace, then making a theoretical succession plan that X or Y or Z as successor 1, 2, 3 will be ready after 3 years or 5 years or 6 years because the job itself has grown so much or the role itself has more, let's say, internationalization. Yes, those are challenges. But at the same time, I think it's very important to put in a pot both internal contenders as well as external contenders. And I think it's very important to respect longevity in an organization. Some of the organizations that I know of which have been extremely successful, including mine, which have weathered all kinds of storms over 75 years, have become successful only because of longevity and because there has been, whether it is a serendipitous discovery or an incidental discovery, there has been succession planning. And leaders have come, therefore, and leaders have occupied seats which have been left behind by others. So therefore, for the longevity of an organization, and especially those who have managed to survive all kinds of storms, I think it's a very, very important process.
Yogi, I'm not against theoretical concept. Correct. Don't mistake me, I'm not at all against that. Succession planning is something which I have learned, I've taught in XLR as a visiting professor. So I'm not against it. What I'm saying is succession planning is a great theoretical concept which gives us a good foundation for thinking, which gives us a good foundation and says, this is what probably you need to do, but in real life, it doesn't work. In real life, those concepts are exceedingly useful and valuable, but not the actual succession planning, saying that I have a site president who is going to retire in 2014, and I'm preparing A, B, and C for that role. Because I got a large corporation, maybe 4, 5 site presidents are retiring, maybe 2, 3 COEs are retiring, the total 8, 10 people have to develop, for which I have a pool of 30 people. Yeah. Now any one of them can take over. So succession planning gives me great ideas and concepts, but do not necessarily say that this is the position. That's my experience.
Rajan, in your experience, will it be a pool system or will it be focused succession planning that would be more effective in implementing the business strategy of a company?
But I completely, I agree with what Vivek is saying. I think succession planning framework gives us a framework, a guideline, a model, and there are lots of models which are available, which also offer certain discipline for managers where they can work towards in planning out careers and talent. And as business has to grow, as business has to thrive, it's important that you also need leaders and talent to really get to achieve those businesses. The other thing what is important is succession planning is not only to be related only at the top and only at the apex management. Succession plan needs to be planned at every level. Now, in organizations, yes, people do work, and in my own previous organizations and current organizations, we do plan people's career and succession plans. But the issue is, for that investment, for developing them, for offering them special assignments, job rotations, training them, hand-holding, supporting them, how much are managers willing to invest that kind of a time when talent longevity is very small, or people's retention is a question mark? Its organization also find that they need certain freshness to be brought in, and hence off-the-shelf talent availability is also available in abundance. And hence the question of organizations deciding whether to really go for a long plan of having succession plans. And even when you have a succession plan, the threat of actually losing out other talent, when people get to know that there is one person who has been identified for the position and the threat of losing out the other key talent because of that. So the other perspective is the top management's own commitment. Having a plan and having a structure, having a design and working towards a plan, but how much of commitment does the top leadership, as Yasho was saying, does the top management and the top leaders have in implementing the plan is a big question mark.
So what I hear of our panelists say that while conceptually this is great, succession planning is great, but in reality, in real life, there are huge implementation challenges which some companies appear to have managed well while others have not been able to manage that well. And perhaps one reason that Rajan is pointing out is the top management buy-in. So, Professor Parekh, in your experience with consulting with various companies, what kind of companies you think have had successful?
Sorry to butt in.
Sure.
It's not exactly the voice of which has come from this chair.
Okay.
And I must record a dissent.
Sure.
Because that's very important. While I respect all the three speakers, I would not say that succession planning remains as concept or theory. I mean, we're now getting into a place where we're taking positions of whether succession planning is theoretical or practical. I think it's something we're discussing this evening because it's an important strategic tool for an organization to maintain its competitive edge. None of the three of my colleagues will deny that. The only question I think, and we need to spend the rest of the evening, if you agree,
Sure.
and spend our energies on figuring out what is it that comes as impediments or challenges in succession planning, and how do we address those, rather than taking positions about is performance appraisal worth it, because people don't do appraisal conversations, people don't have the time. I may come from a different setup which is extremely disciplined or relatively more disciplined, okay? I'm not gloating about it, but it may be a little more disciplined. So I think it's more important to talk about that than taking positions, if you agree.
Sure. So we shall focus on that. And Professor Parekh, in your experience, has there been difference in the quality of implementation of succession planning by either the origin of the company, which is an Indian company versus global versus regional, or by the kind of ownership? Is it promoter managed, is it professionally managed, etc., etc.? What kind of differences have you seen?
That's a very loaded question. Yeah. But let me begin by what Yogi is saying. If you look at the definition of succession planning, we use two words. One is pipeline, and the other is the ladder. Both have very similar templates of succession planning. And the minute you put it as a ladder or you put it as a pipeline, you have narrowed the concept of what planning succession is all about and what leadership is all about. Now, if you broaden the concept, and I will answer your question based on that, if you broaden the concept of saying organization is a pyramidal structure, that's a reality. And people have to go from one level of the organization to the other level of the organization. And then if you take that pyramid as a mountain, there are so many pathways to going up. But we have made a template of saying domain knowledge, we have said a template of, and these are all very standardized templates which take the people to the concept of succession planning. Now, if we say that there are a whole pool of people available, and the people can actually move in the direction of growth and to take responsibilities and positions of responsibilities, and they have a spark, the individuals themselves have a spark, the chances are it would become very different. Organizations, in my view, in the last 40 years that I'm in the academic field and 35 years that I'm doing consulting, organizations do use learning and development and lots of training programs to prepare people to take responsibility positions, to take positions which they can take charge and take the organization forward to growth, to competencies, to capabilities, to productivity, and all kinds of things. So if we start categorizing which level of succession planning we are doing, then the inputs and the investment the organization makes are very different. The people who are in those positions are also very different. For example, a lot of emphasis was given on today's generation. Now, today's generation who's going to become leaders of tomorrow or take high positions of responsibility, they are very different from the ones all of us sitting here. And that is because the generation today who's going to become leaders are fourth generation free Indians. And fourth generation of Indians sitting here with prosperity, with booming India, respected India, they are looking for completely different things. And all of us, I think many of us here are into positions, have taken a route which has been, or taken a path which has been very well laid out of what it means to be successful. But today it's very different. Organizations are there who have invested a lot of money in young people. They start out from right at the entry level to taking them and start sifting them as they start following the path. And there are some people who start at the middle level and take them forward. And there are some people who say, I know he's the one or I know she's the one, and take them. So there are very many different paths. Let me give you one experience I had. I was working with a leadership group doing a leadership mapping. And there were 12, 15 people, and the CEO said, who amongst this is going to be the next person in the leadership role? I did not have a clue as to their designation or to their levels. And I spotted one person based on the mapping, and I said, that seems to be the person. And they said, impossible. I said, fine. Few years down the line, that person became the position in the leadership role. So there are qualities of the individual and the requirements of the organization which align themselves, and you have a person in positions of responsibility. So succession planning, formalized or spontaneous, are two ways, and which way we work at what point of time is only the growth of the business, where the organization is. All of that has multiple elements, not one.
So Rajan, as you said that you believe that succession planning is important for strategic plans to be implemented, but there are challenges, there are impediments. So what are the challenges and impediments?
Well, I think in terms of while you
To ensure that there is robust implementation, what is that should be done differently, ideally?
well, I think it's about after having put together, or while we put together a plan, it's important to engage and involve all the relevant managers, go through the assessment process, have a plan or a tool which is very transparent and known to all the team members. It's also sharing the plans with the people for whom you are making the plans for the future, having a buy-in with the respective managers for, more importantly, the development plan. Their training and development, capability building, and planning for the next succession plan, investing on them is very critical. B, commitment from the management team, that amongst the team, that the people who have been identified, we would be willing to commit and have these people to offer those positions as and when time come in.
So Yogi, how would you react to these challenges and how do you overcome these challenges?
So one of the challenges very clearly is managing expectations of those who are not anointed as successors and come to know through either the grapevine or through a formal process that they're not. That's one. Second is where the role itself changes very rapidly because of the rapid growth of the organization. And you find that all the succession planning efforts have been extremely laudable, but the strategic emphasis of the role means a different domain, a different geography, a different set of competencies, and therefore, how do you utilize all the investments that you put on a particular person and also created a set of expectations with that person? Third is, I think, when we're talking about this topic, if there is a theoretical situation where you have a laissez-faire organization where people can move in a very, shall we say, non-obstruction manner from one department to another, one function to another. Obstructions come only if the bosses say we can't relieve you or there's a shortage of talent, and it's completely laissez-faire. And there is a on-the-job, portal, or a portal where the job is advertised, and you just apply and you move. In such cases, of course, the succession planning has to be extremely fluid, and you need to have a constant process. It's not just the senior people, as someone said, but at all levels. So I suppose doing that when there's a talent shortage brings it closer and closer for my colleagues to win the argument that is purely theoretical. So therefore, one has to be careful to balance out where to draw the line.
Yeah, and Yashu, you pointed out, and very rightly so, that CEO and chairman terms are getting shorter and shorter. And with that happening, and the focus being on market share and profitability, therefore less and less time for some of these initiatives which could be long-term and sustainable, or creating sustainability for the long term. How do you think this can ever get addressed?
The fact is that in countries like China and India, there's a huge dearth of leadership. There is a fact, because I am in touch with a lot of global companies, and sometimes they do talk to us about the CEO role for various things, and it is difficult for them to get, because the type of exposure they want, the type of future challenges which they are going to be facing are absolutely unthinkable right now of most of the people who are in leadership roles. Second is the global excellence parameters have come to India. Either you achieve those excellence parameters or you're finished. You are just no more. With lot of government decisions also, it will come further and further. Now the challenges are competencies, etc. is the right word to use. But who is there to identify those competencies in this type of industry? As I said, if you're talking about change, putting a word, he should be a good manager of change, is a very simple words to put. But there are so many elements of change. Which is more critical, which is lesser critical. And let me tell you, I have been an HR person throughout. I had worked out in my company at all the levels 5 years career plan with consensus of the people. A couple of people left because they were not happy with it. But then it worked, and our attrition went down to our industry till 3 years back to 1%, which used to be average 20%. The issue is getting it executed. Yeah. I had to actually play, then I was an HR head, I was playing a line role, and my word was sort of final, though no line person could resist. But these are very extreme cases, and these are not very healthy cases. So the challenges are another thing, the competencies. I have a very strong belief that learning and developmental things which are there have very limited utilities. I have seen people, they give you only 3 to 4% value addition. It is putting a person on the job, holding him accountable, and giving him empowerment is the biggest learning tool and preparing a person for the future leadership. Him facing tough situations is the biggest training, not training and development, not at all. I am a training man. I was a training man. But let me tell you, it doesn't work at all. It is not skills, it is mindset. it is attitude, and it is how courageous you are to take a decision in an unpredictable situation. These are the qualities which are mattering, which are not the tools which a lot of people, I have seen one or two very, very good companies using those tools and messing up their organization. I'll not name them. Please understand, unless a person is accountable for making a person a leader and his performance, no tool works. Accountability is the most powerful thing of training people and making people responsible. Tools don't work. Tools are very theoretical. And how many tools are now there which have been changed according to the culture of India? And the type of challenges which we are going to face, what type of challenges, which tool in India, which tool globally takes care of that? No one. I'm very openly saying that because I know in depth of everything. And I'm not talking in a very diplomatic way. So these are the realities. So intuition comes. It might be wrong, it might be right.
So Vivek, building from here, if what we're hearing that some kind of call it succession planning or call it creating a common pool of leaders who can take over any position, the challenges on the business side, the buy-in of the business leaders continue to be an issue. And how do you tackle that? How will you tackle that? Because if my priority as a CEO is market share and profitability, which should be, but then the long-term sustainability is either through succession planning or through leadership pipeline, how do you get the buy-in and how do you, and we heard that frameworks are there, but it's about robustness of implementation.
I've never seen any resistance to this kind of thing. Primarily because in the interest of business continuity, I think our leaders are pretty intelligent. They know the importance of it. Again, it's an assumption that leaders are probably resisting creating successors. Leaders are wise people. They know importance of business continuity. They know they have to develop leaders so that they can take over. I think that's not an issue at all. Issue comes in whether I'm going to create a successor for a position or I'm going to create a pool of successors. Now, succession planning per se is not resisted. What is resisted is, am I creating a successor for position A, B, and C, or am I creating a pool? I think both are succession planning according to me. But when we talk of succession planning, it is assumed I'm creating a successor for CFO who is retiring in 2014. No, we are not. We are creating great finance professionals. One of them will become CFO.
What's the harm in creating? Sorry.
I just want to slip in a small sentence here on what Yasho said on this issue of competencies. He mentioned it 2-3 times and I want to build on what he said. One of the things I've learned is that if you look at competency set, it's attachment or anchoring around a band or a grade is now giving way to anchoring it around a role and now even graduating further, anchoring it around a person. So I believe that while models have worked about competency mapping for a particular grade, a particular band, and many companies use that, I think it's time to look at whether we can make competencies work around a role and also around a person who's been anointed for a particular role. So that I think is something worth thinking about. A portfolio of competencies is more important than making a model of any particular consultant or any particular consultancy organization. A portfolio which is flexible and from which you can pick up a menu for which is tailor-made for a person.
Yeah, just to comment on what Yogi is saying, I completely agree with this. It's very important that rather than getting into super specialization, get into creating doctors, and doctors not only who can see and inspect the left ear and the right ear, but doctors who are there who can actually be a bench strength for now and for future. The second is the implementation effectiveness is also about managing and building credibility. And the way to do it is just demonstrate and make few things happen, build the culture, make things happen. I think it's demonstrated and you will see things falling in place in the company.
And how do you build in the effectiveness of implementation that Yasho was pointing out? That when he did drive it and drive it like a line manager rather than an HR manager, he could make it very effective, and that not only helped the business in terms of having the right people at the right point, but also brought down the attrition from 20% to 1%. Now that's really significant. In your experience, how do you drive that kind of effectiveness in the implementation?
Well, I think he raised a very valid point about accountability. And I think that's the crux. And it's actually the issue from both sides. One, from the top management having a commitment and supporting and making things happen. B, HR managers also need to take the ownership, have this accountability, and make things happen. I think they need to have the courage to stand up to what they live for and make things happen.
Yeah, sure.
There are many times people have outgrown their past roles. They are already playing very important roles, but they actually haven't registered it in their minds. So the roles which the HR people play or the roles which the leadership play is to just lift these people and say actually what they are doing. Because people get used to doing whatever they are doing, but not really put the language of the new role that they are playing. And what happens is then that the individuals then continue to think about themselves in ways which they have already outgrown. So how does one propel these people? And definitely one is accountability. Definitely one is putting them into the deep sea and say, okay, move and deliver. So there are very many ways to help people just grow out of their inertia of thinking about themselves in certain ways.
And Yogi, in your experience, how do you monitor the effectiveness of succession planning?
To me, succession planning has a domino effect. Because if you do a succession for a particular individual at a senior level, then there's a chain. And the extent to which an organization is able to manage that chain, either through internal job posting or by recruiting in time or by having people ready, I think is one very specific measure. The other specific measure is, of course, how long a vacancy is vacant, and if it's vacant for too long, then obviously one has to tweak the competencies or look at different set of people. So I think these are the two areas which can tell you whether, and the third perhaps is if you're getting into an inorganic growth situation, either an acquisition. Do you have a leadership pipeline? Do you have a succession pipeline which can allow you to pick a person from the pool and anoint that person as the future chief executive of that particular operation? So these are, I think, tests which come to the mind straight away.
And has any organization, Yasho, tried to quantify the benefits of succession planning or leadership?
It's ultimately the top line and bottom line. That's it. Nothing.
Rajan, any thoughts?
Well, one does measurement and effectiveness on attrition, and but quantification of on succession plans is something which one has not done. But as Yashu was saying, effectiveness is all about because of succession plan, how is it impacting the organization attrition? And that's one relevant measurement that you can see. And the other is the continuity of the top leadership, which sustains in actually the growth of the organization.
Have you come across some models to quantify the benefits of succession planning or leadership pipeline?
The language of the organization changes, the entire language. And the language becomes more of strategic language. It talks about, the people talk about the direction where the organization is going. It talks about what they can contribute. It talks about how they are going to work together. The teamwork starts to become better. And they're only focusing on how the organization can grow and how they can make a difference. So this is what the investment has done when the organization has invested and said, We are preparing you for taking future larger roles. You find rather than it becoming what we have, what we are getting, what we are not getting, it becomes very much future direction and growth oriented.
Madam. The researchers have shown that the most ineffective type of organizations are boss-driven, mediocre are system-driven, effective are customer-driven. And the most effective are customer-driven with a mad boss. He has to be a mad boss. And if he has, because business is disruptive, only then the business is going to survive. And lot of times, people are not aligned to the mad boss. They are fed up of mad boss. So leadership does not mean positive leadership in the true sense of getting people aligned. Business is about getting results in short term, mid term, and long term. For long term and mid term, it has to be total alignment. Short term, you can be shaken. And let me tell you, if your boss is not mad, very soon your business is going to die also. I am so convinced of that.
That's all about entrepreneurship. You got to be disruptive. And I've seen it time and again. Yeah.
So Vivek,
Yeah, language has to.
Vivek, with talking about the ladder of growth through succession planning or leadership pipeline, what is the impact of flatter organizations on these processes? How are the outcomes?
Flatter organizations have created some very interesting climate. See, with the emergence of knowledge economy, with the emergence of internet, with the aspirations of people going up, the organizations have progressively become very flat. I mean, if you really look at today, the layers, I mean, I'm the CHR of Reliance Industries, 700 plus HR people in my department. The lowest level HR professional and between me, only 5 layers. Even other day I was sitting with Mr. Mukesh Ambani, the lowest level engineer to him, maximum layers will be 8. Now, with this kind of 7 or 8 layers or 5 layers, at times 3 layers, this whole concept of career ladder has gone. Good old days, you had career ladders and you could say you will grow like that. Today it's a zigzag career. So you really got to move from one role to another role to another role. I could have 10 pay bands, but not necessarily the levels. So it's all about creating an organizational climate. That's where the focus of HR should be probably, and that's what I've seen helping a lot since almost 90s with Hewlett-Packard and then with Reliance. It's all about creating a climate in the organization which has got humongous enablers for people to grow, rather than saying this is the ladder. And those enablers are in form of having outstanding managers who become career counselors, coaches, reality advisors, and so on and so forth. Creating HR organization which creates the foundational programs, supervisory development program, management development program, competency ladders, variety of foundational programs, so that people get benefit of all that and they are not starved of fundamental training. Creating a climate wherein people can do their own assessments and stuff like that. So it's all about creating enabling environment so that people can blossom the way they want to blossom. I can't decide that this is the way so-and-so person is going to grow. Let the person decide how he wants to grow or how she wants to grow, depending on their aptitudes, and aptitudes do keep evolving and they keep changing, opportunities keep becoming different. So I think it's all about creating an enabling a climate and environment. And I think that's where the entire focus has to be, rather than saying succession planning, career ladders, this, that doesn't work. I think employees feel very delighted the moment they see that they can grow anywhere they want, they can grow the way they would like to progress, and so on and so forth.
I'll give you 2 more perspectives to a flatter organization. When I was very young, I am still young, there was a paper by Mr. Shine, and it is said that had there been a Nobel Prize in the area of management, he would have been the first to get it. 84, 83, he wrote a paper that to one boss, I was taught in my B school to span should be 6 to 8, which I think is still B schools teach. That is, to one boss, 6 to 8 people should report. He had said to one boss, 20 to 40 people will be reporting, which is started happening. 10, 15, because middle level is going up, the cost of people is very high. Now these people who are reporting, if you have to become this manager level, you have to become at the age of 35. If you are not able to, you will be fired because your package will be very high. These are the realities of business. Now, suppose you start a career at the age of 25 and every 2 years you take a job rotation and there are 15 people reporting to this manager, you would have handled 5 jobs. Out of which first or 2 jobs, your knowledge will be totally obsolete. Only another 2-3 jobs you would have some idea because you have handled 5 jobs. Now, what is the quality of this leader, this manager? Knowledge, it is leadership skills. That is why leadership skills getting, it is not only now, it is I think Lord Krishna's time, these are all eternal factors. Arjuna, whose mentor philosopher guide was Lord Krishna, when it came the most critical time to kill his own relatives, he refused. Till Lord Krishna showed his Virat Swarup and showed him a perspective that I can add value to you. So this leader, unless his subordinates feel he can add value, no one will go to him, because these people's performance is totally dependent on their KPI. It cannot be tinkered, maybe 2-3%. These are the professional organizations which are working for. They have the full empowerment because they are closer to the customer. Leaders will have to be powerless, will have to learn to be powerless and still lead the people. These are the changes of the future manager. I have no budget, not even 1 rupee budget. I handle a business of 12,000 crores in a year. And I'm totally accountable for market share and profitability. I have no budget. All decisions taken are by people down the line who are closer to the customer, because I'm sitting in an AC room. I don't know what is the customer in Tirupati to Madurai to Jamshedpur to Kanyakumari will be talking about. How do you lead this? How do you create this type of career and succession, people ready for this type of leadership roles is the challenge, because we want to use power. We want to influence a person's evaluation and become powerful. Those times have gone. Absolutely. And let me tell you, another 5 years it will be reducing further.
That's absolutely great insight. So all of us in the panel, it seems, agree that either through succession planning or through leadership pipeline development, we need to cater to the strategic growth of the business and sustenance and continuity of the business. And we also heard what are the impediments and challenges and how various companies have been managing these impediments and challenges. While, we would love to keep hearing our speakers speak and discuss, but in the interest of time, I would throw open the floor to questions from our audience. Yeah, please, Mike.
Hi. Hello, I'm Nisha Verma from Vodafone. I head talent and diversity. Pardon my optimism, I still do not have as much of experience, as the panel members in there. But I sort of beg to differ on quite a few points that the panel has been discussing with regards to how succession planning sort of doesn't work. Because over the last 2.5 years that I've been in Vodafone, I have really seen it work. I really don't know whether it's, it sounds that strategic, but we have diligently been doing succession planning, and not for people. We are doing succession planning for roles. We have, on our priorities, there are just about 5 priorities on the group HR directors list, which is sort of percolated down to all the HR directors of different operating companies of Vodafone. And, succession planning for the top 30 critical roles is on the top. 70-30 is the ratio that, sort of we work on in terms of 70% positions need to be filled internally and 30% is what is going to come externally. There are simple things that we have been doing, and in terms of talent and people discussions and successions for critical roles forms a part of review of Execo. If Execo is meeting every month, they are talking about these roles. every time the region director is visiting the operating company, apart from reviewing business and all the other right things that a CEO needs to be doing, they are talking about critical roles and its succession. If we as Vodafone India do not have a pipeline, then the group decides for us in terms of who is going to be on our pipeline. I think we are a huge experimenter as an organization. What we do is we put people on roles when they are 65% ready, allowing the balance 35% to really develop on the role when the person is on the role. A whole lot of our talent development programs are geared around ensuring that we are spending all the kind of time developing people at different levels, so that when I think the real conversations around successors for roles is happening, we are then talking about that pool. So be it our talent review discussions wherein we are talking about the rising stars, and the subsequent discussions, if these are your rising stars, where do they fall on the succession plan? If they are there on the succession plan, what are they global leaders, and what have you done to develop?
Absolutely great. This is
So,
absolutely
and that's
great
what I'm saying,
experience.
pardon my optimism, I've seen it, but I'm really seeing it. And the way operating companies are really targeting Vodafone Italy, I mean, the mission for itself is we want to be the talent factory for Vodafone India. I mean, and they are a huge believer of exporting. They are exporting their talent across to different operating companies. And then we are wondering in Vodafone India, oh God, if they are exporting 10% of their rising star population, why am I exporting only 3% of the population? So those are the kind of discussions
That's fantastic.
we are
That's
having.
absolutely fantastic, and thanks for sharing the experience. Would you also have a question for the panelists?
Yes, of course. So in fact, my question for the panelists is, the challenges are, for me as an organization, is about, how do you get the managers or leaders out of their out of their comfort zone and have these conversations? Because, I mean, we are actually talking about Execo succession pipeline the Execo is discussing their succession pipeline in those rooms. So, what is it that you can do to get them out of their comfort zones?
So who would like to take the question?
Yogi, Rajan.
First of all, I would like to share the optimism with the lady professional who stood up and said that she's had a very successful experience in Vodafone, because maybe the power of my co-speakers was so overwhelming that the negative pall of negativism perhaps was flowing through this room. But, and I had to several times correct my facilitator that I stand out in saying that, like the lady professional there, that I think it can be extremely effective. Having said that, in the impediments about, which Nisha Verma talked about, I think it's very important to understand the Indian ethos where people define themselves with the job they have. And succession planning definitely involves a sense of wanting to teach another person the skills that you've imbibed over the years. And therefore, when it becomes a part of the culture that you are measured by the success of how you teach others or how you prepare them, then of course it can become much more successful. And I completely agree with Professor Indra Parekh that it's a part of the DNA of an organization. And I suppose it starts with in a small way, and then you probably spread it around that and once people get this message that it's going to be rewarded, it becomes a part of the culture, it becomes a part of everyday life.
I'm quite surprised that we are pessimistic, she is optimistic, we are positive. But I didn't say, I don't think we were talking anything negative, or we were not at all pessimistic.
Agreed.
We were just saying that our model of succession planning is different. I mean, it's not one-on-one, it's something else. So I wouldn't like to hear that we were pessimistic, negative guys sitting at this table. No, I don't think so. I don't believe I'm a negative guy. I don't believe I'm pessimistic. I'm probably more optimistic than many.
Absolutely.
I'm quite
Absolutely
amazed and
accepted.
surprised with all these
Is-
comments. And I'm
Is
shocked.
there any other question? Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Anil Dhankar. Before the questions, little preamble. I won't take too much of a time, but I think in my own, experience, it's about the discipline. Whether you do in a very structured way, like maybe L&T or a GE, or some other organizations which I've been part of, a city group or HCL, who have also produced a lot of leaders. They did not have as structured succession planning process, but for example, city would move every CEO or a significant leader every virtually 2 years, irrespective of whatever. So when I was heading HR for City Financial, in 2 years. So we used to wonder, saying, where will a person come from? But people came and these people went somewhere else, and that one discipline of rotating leaders, irrespective of what happens to this organization, I think helped City produce. And today, whether it's Aditya Puris or we have a lot of other leaders who have come in from City in the financial services side. Coming on to the other observation or a question, I think at times we become so myopic when we are trying to find a person for a specific role. And I, for last 3 years, run a recruitment firm, and we'll give you an example, maybe extreme example, but we were sending a candidate to a cement company in this organization's regional head role. And the guy is good, great, but he has a gray cement experience, can you get a guy from a white cement experience? Now, that as specific they can get to. Now, my question is, a point, and we want a response from the panel. 25, 30 years ago, who knew Narayan Murthy will create an Infosys? Or A.M. Nayak would lead, L&T, and what it is today, it wasn't, 25, 30 years ago, that kind of an organization. They didn't have that kind of exposure, which today, if we have to replace, of course, they have become much larger, or Kamath, or, when you talk of these leaders, there was no retail banking in India when he came. Or I also have worked in BPO, where earlier a lot of bankers went and set up this industry. Of course, people came from other industries also. But today, when you go to that company and say, I'm giving this leader a bank, no, I want only from a BPO, from a voice process, who has experience in this particular market. Now, people who came without any experience built an industry which is today a sizable industry in 10 years' time. But today, we ourselves as HR leaders or the business leaders aren't ready to accept somebody else. So what are those qualities really where we should be focusing when we are looking at leaders for this turbulent times or, ever-changing world? That's one thing which really puzzles me. So that's it.
So who would like to take that?
Since you mentioned the name of our chairman, I want to say that people like Mr. Nayak are maybe 10, are amongst 10 in a billion. It's not every day that you come across such people. But, and these are, like Mr. Narayan Murthy, Mr. Nayak and other leaders are very, very, very special, and they have grown maybe because of their own dint of determination and so on. I think succession planning is all about making ordinary people do extraordinary things also. And I think it's about tracing and tracking and measuring and assessing and developing leadership behaviors at the right time so that people are given the opportunities to blossom. So out of 20 who are given that opportunity, maybe 10 don't take it, 10 take it, and out of those 10, maybe 1 or 2 make it really big. But I think that's the process that should be professionally available to everyone in an organization so that early in their life, they see that opportunity and they throw their hat into the ring. Some of them may fall off.
Any other question? We can have 2 more, that's all. No questions? Sure, there's somebody who wants to go there. No? Okay. Okay, great. So there are no more questions. So we can bring the panel discussion to a close, and Professor can take us to the next steps.
Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, panelists, for sharing your experience and also for making it lively and interesting at the same time. Some of the words that kind of stand out is leaders have to be powerless to lead. I mean, I found that very impressive. And cater to strategic growth, succession planning is the DNA of the organization. These are probably some of the take-homes that I have taken. Now, before we close the session, may I request Mr. Kamal Singh, NHRDN, to assist me in giving away mementos to two of our panelists. Please come. One to Mr. Prashant Srivastava. One to Ms. Indra Parikh. I call upon Dr. Rahul Singh of BIMTech to give away mementos to two more of the panelists. To Mr. Rajan Datta. To Mr. Vivek Paranjpe. I request Professor Kishore Sinha to give away mementos to Dr. Yasho Verma. To Mr. Yogi Sriram. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this discussion. I'm sure that for each one of us, this program was insightful and enriching experience. We look forward to your continuous feedback and engagement with the organizers. On behalf of the organizers, I once again thank the leaders of the sessions for their fantastic efforts and all the panelists for taking out time from their busy schedules to share their experience with us. A big round of applause to you, our audience, for being here today. Please join us for dinner and cocktail, which is being served in the room next door. So it's also time to do a bit of networking. Thank you very much.